right, so we should be live now. How's it going, everyone? Let me know if you can hear me and see me. Okay, I'll try to pull it up here. Just let me know if the sound is good and the video quality is all right. Starting to get some of my new lights here, my new lighting set up, including some. Maybe we'll add some color lights at some point to the background as we go here. Um, Audio and video are good. Great. Um, Hey, your average player. May have been Java Kuma. May have been Tennis Wolf, Swag Daddy, Sniffix, Busy Bee, Leaf Green Goblin, Dark Lava Lizard, Pokey Depth Store, Filmington. How is everyone doing? So I do want to. This is a little bit of like an impromptu video. But um, I feel like this is a good topic to talk about. I've had a number of people reach out to me recently, and I've seen a lot of people like make videos, not necessarily just in the Pokemon world, but in the like general card collecting world, talk about this topic of like, hey Jake, like, should I be doing this? Should I be buying cards? Obviously we spend a lot of time talking about like what you should buy, assuming you should maybe be buying anything. And I think that it's a good topic. It's something that gets into a lot of topics like what are your goals in this hobby? Do you feel like you're struggling with addiction issues? Do you feel like you're enjoying yourself here? And all very like subjective personal things, but I wanted to, and I can certainly go on my own sort of spiel on this, but I wanted to open it up to the audience to kind of come on in a call-in show. We haven't done a call-in show in a while, and um, if you look above, and I'll put it there, you can click on that StreamYard link, and you can actually just make sure you turn your camera on and get set up, and you can actually come on the show live and share your opinion on this topic. I'd like to start on this topic, but we can also stray off of it as we go. So if anyone wants to come in, please come in. Otherwise, I can start to talk about my thoughts on it. So I think there's a lot of people who have spent a lot of money, have a large portion of their net worth, a large portion of their time and energy and focus goes into being in this space and being in this hobby. And I think that it's a particularly important thing for people like me to maybe touch on these things, because I think probably more likely than not, there's a number of people who particularly watch channels like mine who are pretty deep in and are spending a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of energy doing this. And so I think that it's always good to reflect on, is it worth doing that for you? And although I would love the answer to be yes, because I do want to help grow the hobby and make the hobby an enjoyable place to be, where people are having a really fun, good time, are not overspending, are buying things that hold value, either in a financial sense or just in a personal enjoyment sense, like hold value for you, that you like get a lot of pleasure and value from over time in terms of appreciating the item or enjoying it. I do think that certainly for some people, it can be very important to stop buying, and in some cases even completely don't be buying anything, for an extended period of time, particularly probably if you're paying down credit cards, or if you're feeling, highly sort of addicted to the chase and the high. If you're not even opening packages, looking at cards, and you find yourself mainly uh, just sort of looking for that high of that next find and that next buy and that next card. I think the worst case scenario is that's what's driving you fully, nothing else. No friend, the friendships, the relationships aren't driving you. And again, these are all my opinions, and my opinions are not fact on this. They are simply my experiences in the hobby, which is why I would love to get people to come on and talk about their experiences and their thoughts. But for me, this would be sort of the worst case scenario of these things. So you're not spending time looking at your cards. You're not spending time appreciating your cards. You're not going to things in person where you can hang out with people and spend time with people. And so all of your joy or enjoyment from the hobby is purely coming from the dopamine of initially buying that item. And then you kind of need to buy more and more expensive items and more difficult items to find. And maybe you use rationalizations like, these items are a good investment, or these are going to definitely go up over time, or those types of things, or things like, people will like me or be more impressed with me in the community, or will think I'll fit in better in the community, or people will respect me more if I have a big collection or I have the right cards. My personal opinion is that those are generally not good motivations to be buying particularly expensive things. And although I think they're very human motivations, and I certainly have those motivations, they're not my sole motivations, and they're not my main motivations. And also they, I try not to act when I'm purely feeling motivated by those types of things. And I think that there's a lot of ways to enjoy this hobby in a way that's like financially responsible. I do think it's really important to have sort of an accurate perspective or picture of like how much money you might make in this hobby. I think it's an important to not, and I think it's part of why, on my channel and Dan Catch 'em All Collectibles, I think both of us take this very seriously, because we take very seriously like the health of people watching us, and we know that the people watching us are probably at like the greatest risk for some of the things we're talking about. So we do have someone who wants to jump on, and I'll start my rambling there, but I guess I'll end it with saying that like I do think that there are ways of enjoying this hobby in a very long-term way, but that takes a lot of like balance in your life, having other hobbies, having other friendships outside of the hobby, having relationships outside of the hobby, purchasing, within your means, buying things that you really enjoy, that you like, figuring out ways to enjoy this hobby that doesn't cost you anything, or cost you very, very little. And I think all of those things are really important so that, a year from now, or 6 months from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, somewhere down the line, you're not like, I've spent the last 3-4 years of my life building something that I thought would be a great investment that's gone down in value. Instead of learning skills or developing my career or building friendships and relationships, in person with people around me, I've done it with people who are online, who may or may not remain in the hobby, who may or may not feel as connected to you as you feel to them. Now, of course, I think that online relationships can be very meaningful and real, but I do think that they don't necessarily stick the same way as in-person ones. It's part of why I do encourage people, to of course, like join Discords and connect online, but also to come to events and meet in person, develop local game nights, local community around you. Um, you know, I can only be friends with so many people. You know, everyone watching this can only be friends with so many people, and only has so much time for so many people. And so, really developing those relationships um, uh, is vital, I think. And I know that like we're all adults and people are going to do what they're going to do, and they can just, everyone's going to decide what makes sense for them. And again, these are only my opinions, but I just think like I really want people to think very critically about how do I in 2 years, 3 years, 1 year, 6 months, how do I get the most from this hobby, enjoy this hobby, and that it is not a detriment on your life and doesn't impede sort of progress in other areas of your life. And I think because it's such a time consuming and such a intense, energetic hobby, I think that, hopefully you're getting a lot from that, and you're getting a lot back, particularly when you're putting in a lot. And so I care about people who watch my channel. I care about people in general. And so I guess I want to take responsibility. Like, I don't want my channel, my Patreon, my Discord community to be a place where people aren't growing or aren't flourishing in their lives, and it becomes despite sort of Dan and I's best effort, a sort of negative for them. And I don't think it has to be or needs to be, but I do think it's an important discussion. So um, I'm going to be bringing Pikachu on to share his thoughts on the subject. I also am going to post one more time, just if anyone else wants to come on to talk about this topic, or other topics as we kind of go. But yeah, okay. I want to add one more thing before I bring up Pikachu. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just have a bunch of random thoughts that don't necessarily string together. I think that you have to understand that businesses and influencers, although I don't think they're bad people, don't necessarily have your best interests at heart. And I think it's really why it's very important for every person to reflect on what is best for themselves. Um, and that it's going to be different for everyone, rather than sort of looking to myself or bigger influencers or sort of anyone to really be there for them in like a really significant way and always have their best interests, particularly people who have businesses who are selling things, who are selling product, who are selling, and that does not mean these people are bad people or have any or aren't trying to create and provide value for you. I think that people can be way over negative on business and people creating businesses that are providing value. But I also think like they have incentives, right, to sell you stuff, to encourage you to stay in the hobby, to encourage you to be engaged and to enjoy it. And I think, really reflecting like, are you? Oh, I think my internet went down there for a second. Hopefully I'm back now. I think my internet probably went down for a second there, but yeah, it is where I'm coming from in this video, and I just want to have an honest discussion with real people from the community about it. Okay, so Pikachu, I'm bringing you on.
Hey everybody, Jake, can you hear me okay?
I can. Hello.
Awesome. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Probably going to make it kind of brief because I'm just on my cell phone right now, so sitting in a parking lot. So, but this is a cool topic that you're discussing, and I think that it's pretty very relevant for the times. And just to kind of like break it down a little bit in a way that I'm kind of viewing it, like just kind of like my career and like my background in the world or whatever. In a very elementary way, I look at things sometimes as like have tos and get tos. And I think that when it comes to like spending money in the hobby, if for you, you're feeling like it's a have to instead of a get to anymore, that's probably like the first big red flag that would be raising, in my opinion. Because I think that everybody enters the hobby from like a get to space. Like we're coming in off of like nostalgia. I know John Radar, he's talked about how a lot of people enter Pokemon off the back end of like, like big life changes or life events. And a lot of people entered off of COVID too, which, was a pretty catastrophic, like just socially, right? Just looking at socially, it was like a big event. So usually re-entering a hobby comes from a place like that. And I think that it's like an opportunity to have fun, to build friendships, right? Like there's a lot of great people like yourself, Professor Oak come to mind, Java Kumo's in the chat. Um, I don't know. So like if you're surrounding yourself with people and you're viewing it as a get to, I think that so much good can come from it. But obviously, like when you're looking at like consumerism, especially from like a perspective where like profit is a potential outcome too, it can become a little bit monotonous or take over in ways that you don't necessarily intend for it to. So I do think that there's a fine line to be tread there. And I think that it's valuable that you're bringing this up in the first place. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think that's really smart. When can you speak a little bit more? Can I push you a little bit more on, maybe personally, sort of how you kind of navigate that? Don't share anything you don't want to share, but how have you been able to successfully navigate it, or if you want to share struggles or anything like that along the way? You're a name. It's great to actually to see your face and talk to you here. But you're a name that I've seen like many many times around. How has it been for you kind of navigating that, and how are you doing these days? Are you enjoying it? Do you feel like you're in a good place? Anything you want to touch on there?
Yeah. So I'm doing well with the hobby. I'm enjoying it. I kind of like branch out a lot, similar to yourself, but not quite as cultured. So I participate in like Pokemon, Dragon Ball Super, Yu-Gi-Oh. So first of all, just having like a broad diversity of like interests within trading cards in general, that kind of helps keep things fresh. And
Yeah.
you're also like interacting with different social groups that way too, which is interesting. But then also like so I do flip, but that's not my primary focus. Like I first got into Pokemon through collecting, like when I re-entered, and so I think that there's like a fine balance to be had there. And for a short time, one thing that I did kind of struggle with is like um, shout out to Retrospects. He kind of helped me see the dark side for a while, but I got like really into flipping for a bit, and it's cool earning money, and it's like it is to reference Radar again, like Pokemon is kind of like the ultimate side hustle, right? Like it's something that you can enjoy and profit off of, which is like a pretty rich experience. But I felt myself like not necessarily enjoying the hobby for like the reasons that I initially did. And it's like, I think that, right, like whenever we're talking about any kind of debacle in life, and I discussed this recently with quite a few people. So sorry if I sound like a broken record to anyone in chat, but it's like whether we're talking about like flipping versus collecting, PSA versus CGC, vintage versus modern, right? Like if you are on either end of the extreme in life in anything, basically, you're probably wrong. So the answer is like somewhere in between always, right? Um, so it's like if we're viewing things like exclusively as like flipping, there's a lot of drawbacks to that because you're not like you're potentially like bottlenecking yourself from like some interesting like I guess like personal connection things that you might have with like a particular item that you can reflect on from like your childhood or whatever. Like a card that comes to mind, like I remember vividly as a kid sitting on my bedroom floor with an expedition pack, and I pulled that Mewtwo. And I have the Japanese version of that card in a binder, and like every time I flip to that page, like it takes me right back there. Like I just so vividly remember the experience of that, and it's like yeah, flipping that card would be really cool if I bought it raw and graded a 10 or whatever. I'd probably hit a great margin and also see that card for a little while. Um, but the LP or like near mint minus copy that I have in my binder that I actually get to revisit regularly, that means something, right? And so I guess like sorry if I'm talking in circles here, but
No,
like
that's great.
like I kind of like took for granted the value of collecting, and I think that there is value in collecting because it's like it reminds you of your roots, right? It takes you back to where you got into this from. And so I think that it's okay to be a flipper. Obviously, like one, we're able to get great prices from people who flip because if it was only people like, who valued their items like through the lens of collectibles, we'd all probably be paying like much greater prices for the cards that we want or whatever. So it's great when people are just looking to hit like a small margin and um, I don't know. So anyway, to dial it back into reality here. So I caught myself just like primarily flipping and even selling some items that I had planned to like keep in my collection, right? Um, and luckily I didn't sell off anything that I was like really going to miss that much. So in that regard, it was just a bit of like a fat trimming advent, if you will. But
Mhm.
yeah, so like after about 6 months of that, I just kind of like sat back and was like, you know what, like it's okay to be collecting and have fun with it. And I've always been pretty like intelligent financially with like how I'm utilizing my money within the hobby, right? Like
Mhm.
um, I was fortunate to like re-enter in like late 2019, early 2020, and I just started with like $400, and I actually did flip a couple binders just to like build money and like I've maybe put like a couple dollars of my own money into the hobby, but it's like largely funded itself over the years. So I'm pretty fortunate in that regard. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just being smart about it is like a huge thing. Like, don't not putting myself in like financially compromised positions has been massive for my long term enjoyment of the hobby. It's not like when I have a package arrive, I have to like hide it from my wife or anything, or like lie about the values of cards. Like, so I don't know. Just like being a reasonable person about things is probably a big deal. So I don't know.
Um, that was thank you so much for sharing. That was it's really great to hear you speak on this. You're very very thoughtful person, and I I think that um, trying to find that balance and sort of having that awareness of like sort of who you are as a person and what I don't know what's going on with my mic. What pitfalls may come up for you. So like for you, you may know that, you know, like I think, and I think you touched on a little bit here in what you were talking about, but I do think that the hobby, I think the hobby can get the worst for people who are addicted. I'll just say it very bluntly,
Mhm.
addicted to pack opening.
Yeah.
I'll say it very, very bluntly because not only do you have the addiction of the high and the rush, but you're also constantly losing value all the time. And I think the same type of addiction can be in buying raw cards or buying graded cards as well, which can also be very problematic. I think that some of those people, including myself, can struggle with some of that addiction to that sort of dopamine rush, but you can still kind of offset it or offset the damage to your life by reselling or figuring out how to make money off of doing that or having sort of a smart financial sense. I still don't think that's the best path. I think that that's better. Like I think the worst thing is when you're in this hobby and your addicting tendencies lead you to like, yeah, just as you said, like hiding, right? Hiding packages from your wife or from your fiance or girlfriend or, boyfriend or hide, uh, sort of lying to yourself about, rationalizing that these pack openings are investments. I think part of what really fueled my sort of outrage during the boom was that sort of thing. Was anyone selling things that were clearly people losing money as like good investments? Uh, but I think that even if you are like you can be addicted to investing. And although that might be financially good in a sense, it's not good for your life because money and investing is not the only thing that is important in life and that brings happiness and satisfaction. And so I think that that's an important distinction. And then figuring out like, even if I am making money, am I enjoying that? Am I enjoying that process? Or do I feel like it's kind of hard to stop? I think one thing that I find that maybe can be relatable for you or for other people is like when you feel like there are lots of good deals, being able to sort of let those go.
Mhm.
Where you feel like you see all of these plays and all these opportunities to make money, but that can be it can be like if you are spending time 5-6 hours a day searching on eBay and doing all these types of things, is that even though you're making money off that, is that in the best case, right? Is that a good use of your time? Is that worthwhile? Or can you have more balance with friendships, with your girlfriend, with other activities, these types of things. And then, you know, to what you were talking about too, of like, you know, am I a business? Am I flipping? Am I trying to make money? Am I trying to build a collection? You know, am I trying to build an investment portfolio? You know, what am I really trying to do there? And then how do I balance all those things with the other important areas in your life? And I really, really believe that like you can be like a phenomenal investor in sort of this type of stuff and still burn yourself out if you do not, again, just my opinions, if you're not furthering yourself in other areas of life, because money is not the only important thing. And even furthering other areas within the hobby, like your friendships, like your relationships, like looking at your cards, enjoying your cards, appreciating your cards, appreciating what you already have, and not just sort of on to the next money making, onto the next sort of thing. And I think that sort of that hustle grind culture, you know, even if you're very good at it and are making money, can have its sort of own toxicity to you, which I think is also part of this discussion. But I do think the worst case is when the addiction is also costing you financially and not just taking up a lot of your time or energy, but but really hurting you financially and putting you deep in debt. And the worst is going to be, I don't worry about that as much with the people who generally engage in this channel. Although I do think that we're all, you know, there could definitely be, you know, risk for that.
Hey, not sure if my
You guys
internet.
hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. Jake, I can hear you if that is what you're looking for. Hey, can you guys all hear me? What's up?
Hey, sorry, Drew. Can you hear me now?
All good. Yeah, sorry. I was not entertaining chat. My apologies.
I left you alone. My apologies.
No worries. I honestly didn't even think about the fact of like, oh, this is my responsibility now. So.
What is that sound? Is that sound on my end?
I don't know. I don't have anything playing in the back end.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Yeah. So would love to hear your thoughts, if any, on that. You know, and I forget exactly where I was cut off, but I do worry and have always worried the most for the people opening packs, which is why I have always put the most pressure. And I do think there's ethical pressure on pack breakers and people who are selling the most gambling stuff in the hobby, where people are definitely going to lose the more they buy from you inherently based on like the odds. There's some responsibility, although I've always felt there's also responsibility on people, you know, selling items that they think people are gambling on or addicted to. And this gets into difficult discussions, and people have strong opinions. I've always felt that it's a cop out to say that everyone's an adult and basically I can sort of behave however I want, and it's on other people if they buy from me or not. Like I just think that that's a ridiculous, honestly, the fundamental boiling down of that is a ridiculous take. I also think it's ridiculous to say that any one of us is God and can control what other people do. That like we have ultimate responsibility for other people's actions and these types of things, which we don't. But I do think we have responsibility to be the most ethical selves we can be, and you sort of leave that at the door, and then people are going to take that however they take that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my challenge has always been to people like, you know, rather than that sort of cop out of like, I'm going to try to get mine and I'm just going to be as selfish as I can and take advantage as much as possible of other people. And it's their responsibility to defend themselves. I prefer to live in a world where we're all trying to take care of each other while we're trying to take care of ourselves. Um, but yeah, any part of that piece or the earlier stuff you wanna touch on? I know I said a lot.
You did, but I honestly could rant for a long time about all of it. I will I'll try to spare you though. So the first one being like, okay, I know that there's like a common sentiment too of like, okay, conversely, we are all adults. And so one devil's advocate argument that gets thrown out is like, who are we to tell other people what to do with their money, right? But it's like, okay, well, the fine line there is sometimes people need a good role model, or sometimes people need good suggestions, and that's just part of like well-rounded relationships with others. And so part of, again, about being like an ethical individual, or even just like basic caring, I would say, is like if someone that you love or someone that you are friendly with or whatever is like clearly doing things that are destructive in some way, financially in this particular example, it's a natural response to maybe be like, hey, like this is something you might want to consider, while never overstepping boundary, or
Sure.
while trying not to overstep boundaries. But yeah, I think that that's a fine thing to do, and it's not like, the difference there would be like, hey, you should only be spending this much money on, various areas of your life. Like that's like a militant approach and you're trying to control somebody,
Sure.
where it's like potentially just giving somebody a tip or something. Giving people unsolicited advice can be hard, obviously.
Sure.
But yeah, like if it's someone that you have a good relationship with and they're like, an acquaintance or a friend of yours, I think that it's fine to just put good ideas out there. And that's, because personally, like, well, okay, man, okay. In my line of work, like clarity is a big thing because I do a lot of like social interaction with other human beings. And so like sometimes you have to say things that like people take for granted as being obvious, right? And that's just clarity, right? Because you can't, assumed knowledge is like one of the greatest social obstacles in my opinion. Like you can't assume that everybody has the information that you have, and sometimes it might be beneficial if you share that with them, and obviously like in the most gentle way possible in some situations. But yeah, like, so kind of like going away from that, like I think it's okay to put good ideas about like, hey, like maybe let's be sensible with like, consuming the hobby is something that we all love to do, but maybe we need to be sensible with our spending. And here are some things that like are probably big like net deficits to your wallet, right? Like pack opening is a huge one, but like with that being said, it's also probably like the gateway of the hobby, right? That's that's how a lot of us kind of re-enter. Like I remember, seeing a cosmic eclipse pack on the Walmart shelf when I was getting groceries once. And that's how I re-entered the hobby. I was like my girlfriend at the time, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to grab this pack of Pokemon cards. And luckily we were like close enough at the time already that I wasn't like too embarrassed about wanting Pokemon cards as a grown man. And she's, she's pretty like accepting of my interests anyway, fortunately. But yeah, just like, but, and at the beginning too, it's like, right, grabbing one or two packs of Cosmic Eclipse is always like a huge deliberation. And then like, you get years into the hobby and hope maybe you've made some money or whatever, and you can pretty quickly drop like $1,000, which is a substantial amount of money in day-to-day life, right? Like, um, I'm, you know, in like the Midwest part of America, like that whole region, like that's like a reasonable home's mortgage for the month is $1,000, right? Or thereabout. Like that's a good chunk of change, but you could drop that on like one card and it's like not even a 10 of a good card. You know what I'm saying? So, um, I don't know. I guess, yeah, like putting good ideas out there because, in collectibles in particular, like money can snowball quite quickly. So, yeah, I don't know. And then
For
with,
sure.
with that too, on the pack breaking note, and I probably should hop off soon after this. I apologize for being so in and out. But yeah, like the old sentiment of like, there's plenty of room at the top. Like I wish I could emphasize that more, and I wish that I had like a more like big platform, I guess, to come from, because I'm just like some long haired dude sitting in a vehicle, but like there is plenty of room at the top, and like you can make money and not take advantage of people. And I don't know. I was working with like a group of kids recently, and I was working on like this like soft division kind of like deal, and I had one of those bricks of energy cards from an ETV, right? And um, we were working on just like some basic like math algorithms or equations or whatever. And I start off with just a safety conversation. It's like, we don't want to be bonking heads or whatever, but I take the two handfuls of these cards and I just chuck them in the air and I'm like, hey, grab some, right? And these kids are swarming around. There's a point to this, I promise. But and then I start giving like conditions incrementally, and I'm like, the first one's like, hey, everybody needs exactly two cards, and if there's any left over, you can put the leftovers over on the table there, right? And we just divided those 45 cards into however many equal groups, right? And then we can see what's left over. The next condition that I gave, and this is kind of where the point kind of begins to bloom here, but I was like, okay, now everybody must have exactly two cards, but they have to be the same energy type. And the thing is, you can't talk about it. Like, you can't use your words. And, kids of like any age group, particularly like in the pre-operational phase of development, it's like that is super tough because now we're getting in the realm of like serious abstractions cognitively. And so it's like this huge dilemma that they have, and it's like a social dilemma too, but they can't use their primary social tool. So serious problem solving has to go underway. And, at the end of like just 3 minutes, every kid in the room ended up with two matching energies. And I was kind of like asking some of the kids, like, oh, how did you get yours? Right in front of the entire group. And, it was like a lot of them started congregating around this one particular table, and they would explain how, they saw an energy that they needed to make a pair. So they just put their other one down. And that energy became the one that somebody else needed in order to create their matching pair. Right. And so there's this big like chaotic trading table that no one's allowed to talk at. And then in other areas of the room, there's kids like in the fringe that are just like making silent deals happen, right? Like, they're not talking about it, but they hold up their cards and they identify like, oh, I need those ones, you need this one, like, let's make it happen. And like the moral at the end is like, yeah, like we just did a lot of cool like math principles and stuff like that. It was really sweet. But also, did you notice that everybody was able to accomplish the goal like that I set out for you to kind of undertake? And they're like, yeah. It's like, well, the important part about this is like everybody did this without lying, cheating, or stealing. Like, you followed the rules. People were your resource, and through some problem solving and some patience, right, you were able to succeed. And
Mhm.
I don't know. Well, we're not kids, right? We're grown adults, men and women. But like that's like if we were able to extrapolate ideas from that lesson, like that to me was like a big eye opener. And like the lesson hit me about halfway through I was actually presenting it. So that was like, I'm not like some philosophical genius or whatever, but like it was just an aha moment for me. It's like, wow, like all these people did this. And you've talked about altruism in the past, but like that's what it was, right? A room full of altruists
Yeah.
made it work. So
Part of what you're talking about is game theory and the economics of how cooperation can actually make everyone get a better result rather than everyone trying to compete. If everyone kind of is a cheater and everyone's constantly competing against each other, the greatest cheater will win, but everyone else will lose badly. And overall, everyone will do worse. So it's this interesting sort of race to the bottom that can happen. But yeah, thank you so much
yeah.
for that. Appreciate you. And
All right. Well,
yeah, please hop on again in the future.
will do. Thank you for entertaining my rambling, and hope you have a great stream, man. And I'll see you
Not
around.
at all. You brought a ton of value, man. Thank you.
All right. See ya.
So we got two more people I'm going to bring on in a second, but I do want to touch on one thing very quickly, which is this idea, because I see mainly just one person in the chat, talking about how that gambling basically isn't a bad thing, and I think what can happen is it's very easy to like talk by each other when actually we have a lot more agreement on this stuff than maybe people realize. Like, I think that this would just be, and everyone has their own personal opinion. There's no objective fact here. I think that some pack openers and live streamers are providing really good value for the people who for their audience. I think that they're very careful about not trying to push them to buy more, trick them with sort of financially, like you're going to make money, sort of like, try to get them to not understand like they are going to lose probabilistically and to focus on the big hit. Like, there are like casinos are built in some ways as an industry to in the good side, they're built for sort of like entertainment and value, and that people I'm willing to lose mathematically because it's fun to have the chance of hitting really big, and it's fun to and it's fun to go to this place with all these lights and all of these games, and I'm willing to play this game that I know logically I'm going to lose over time because I'm getting enjoyment and fun and entertainment from it. That is value, and that is a relationship. You are paying, money for entertainment, okay? And as long as that's what's going on, I have no issue with it, But I think that at its worst, and it crosses that line, and you see sort of predatory, like, and it really goes to something that Pikachu said, that like businesses can be run ethically and still make money. Now, often the unethical businesses make a lot more money than the ethical businesses, at least until they get found out for being unethical, and then hopefully they get the word gets out there and people stop dealing with them. But like cheating and taking advantage of people's worst interests, and taking advantage of people who have the biggest issue with addiction and gambling, can make you a lot of money. That's just a reality. So, but people who are willing to not take advantage of that and still try to create a business that has value and that brings a lot of entertainment for only a small premium or upcharge, absolutely have my respect and bring a lot to the hobby, because I think that gambling is a core reason why the hobby is enjoyable and fun. It's not the reason, but it's one reason why the hobby can be enjoyable and fun. And if you don't like gambling, you should, at all, and are just anti that, you should be against the Pokemon company. They're the ones actually making the money at the end of the day on creating these items that they know people that are intentionally being gambled on. And they're sort of the house at the end of the day, collecting the money with all the middle people, getting money along the way. As long as there's entertainment in every step of that way, like, I have no issue with it personally. So again, let's bring Purple REM up on stream next. Hey, how we doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you for waiting. And then we have one more person in the queue, Leaf Green Goblin. You'll be up next, just to let you know where you are in the queue. And I'm going to post another link in the chat if someone wants to then get in line behind that. But thank you so much, Purple REM, for waiting and jumping on. Love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I'm in London in the UK, and so normally I always miss these lives and watch them back. So it's really cool to be a part of one. Thank you for having me. Yeah, a lot of what you spoke to at the beginning, really, as I was listening, was kind of, I was feeling, oh, he's describing a lot of what I'm going through at the moment. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you a little context. I've been, in and out of the hobby most of my life. In like 2011, I watched some videos on YouTube. It might have been Gem Mint Pokemon, and I realized that my childhood collection wouldn't really be worth much because the condition, I threw them in a shoebox. Mm-hmm. And so I realized that if I wanted to make an investment in it at that age, that I needed kind of mint condition cards. So at the time I bought a first edition Gym Challenge booster box for £250, which, considering what they are now, was the right move. I opened it. I took real care of the cards, sleeved in a binder, and then kind of got out of the cards for a long time. And then it was kind of early 2020 when I got back into it. Mm-hmm. Then I sent my cards off to PSA in November 2020, and they took 2 years to get back to me, which was, a tough wait. But now they're back, and I did, really well on some of the big cards on the grades. Mm-hmm. So I'm now sat in a position where And during that 2 years, I was still, I was interested in the hobby. I was increasing my knowledge. I was picking up new things that I liked, that thought had, good potential. And now I'm at this place where I got my cards back. I did really well, and kind of 95% of my personal wealth is now in these cards. And they mean a lot to me because I opened them as a teenager. I graded them myself, but I'm in this kind of weird position of, I'm not super cash rich at the moment, but I have a lot of kind of wealth in shiny cardboard. And then the other thing that I'm kind of struggling with is, I have because of that 2 year wait and grading being, difficult to access, especially from the UK, my grading pile just built up and up and up and up. So I've got, 100, like probably 300-400 cards that, to be optimized properly, should be sent in for grading. But I keep spending my grading money on new cards. So I'm in this, I'm in a bit of and I'm feeling a bit of odd burnout from the hobby because of this. And I just wanted to get your perspective.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing. I really think just sharing the story is the key. And because I think that so many people here, I'm sure, can relate to elements of that or the whole thing. And I definitely don't think that, it's, and I know you know this, but obviously it's for me to tell you, what exactly to do it, in your situation. I mean, a couple things I would say is you're very aware of your situation, which is the key most important step. And I would trust yourself for you to sort of navigate then your way kind of through that. I mean, the only things that I would maybe say that could be helpful, and things that I think about for myself in helping you to consider these things as you figure things out for yourself, is certainly sitting down and trying to come up with somewhat of a goal is important. In terms of how, sitting down, going through the cards, maybe picking out, which ones are the ones that I really want to keep, which ones are the ones that I think are the most undervalued, maybe, if you want to bring the financial stuff into play, and what are the ones that it would feel better to let go of and feel good to let go of. And then sometimes people think in terms of I should only have a certain percentage of my net worth in this. It's really more complicated than that, because it has to do with how diversified you are in something like this across a lot of different things, across a lot of different types of collectible hobbies. It has to do with the amount of money that you make, in your current income versus the amount you have invested. So for example, if I make $70,000 a year, but I have a $2 million, that's a phenomenally bigger risk that you're taking than if I have, just to give an example for people, than if I have 90,000 in Pokemon and I make $90,000 every year. And so even though I may have 80 to 90% of my savings, I could probably save $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 a year on my job, and in 2 years have the amount that I have into this. And so all of those things are part of trying to factor the financials of it. But the other side of it is just the emotional, the quality of your life. It's feeling like you're not in control of yourself, feeling like it's causing, just as you said so well, and I can relate to this a lot at different times, right? It can cause burnout because it's just the stress of feeling like I'm making a mistake or that I'm not in control of myself can cause you to not enjoy the cards as much, not enjoy the buy. And then what I talked about in my addiction video, which is the addiction loop, then you start buying more to deal with the negative feelings from buying too much. And that's when true addiction, the true addiction loop for people is when the thing that is causing them pain is then the thing that they're using to deal with the pain. And then it just gets worse and worse and worse. Right. And that's very common with alcohol, with drugs. It's also very common with like online shopping and buying, any sort of thing. And there, you're a really smart, aware guy of sort of, and so what I would just say is sort of just trust yourself to sort of figure it out over time and figure out, people that you can trust to kind of talk to and friends. And I can certainly be a resource for you. A bunch of people here can be resources of like having these conversations. I think you sharing this though makes so many people here be more thoughtful about sort of where they're at. And that's actually the key to health. The most important thing is not like any one of us is like a guru and has like the answer to something, but it's like just being aware of the topics and then you slowly starting to figure things out. I think the number one thing that I learned as a therapist, and maybe this will be wrong somewhere down the line, but like when people talk about like the process of therapy, it's like annoying because it's like, well, what does that mean? And how long is it going to take? And just give me the answers. I want to feel better and be happy. But like life really is a process. And like everyone, like one day, this way of thinking may help you, one day that way of thinking, one day this sort of religion or this sort of philosophy or this type of thing. And really, I think the best thing you can do is just work on your problem, be honest with yourself, be vulnerable and honest with other people and share. And like, I think you'll improve this over time. Like you'll learn the lessons. Like I have faith in you and anyone, right? That you'll sort of learn the lessons that you need to learn, particularly when you're actually addressing the problem and looking at the problem. A lot of therapy is about getting someone to actually look at themselves. Once you're looking at yourself, then it's just a process of you doing that and increasing sort of your self-awareness and then increasing your ability to kind of control yourself and make better choices for your life. And so just kind of having the patience to be in that process for yourself in a genuine way is what I would say. And, thankfully it sounds like you're in that category of like, I was smart financially with this. I understood the market pretty well and I made money doing this theoretically, or I have a more valuable collection. Mm-hmm. But you're feeling, I'm hearing those feelings of like, maybe I'm uncomfortable with how much I have in this. Maybe I think I should sell some, and I can't tell you whether or not, because I think if you were really sure, you would have done it already.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you whether or not that's the right thing to do, but I think you just continuing to have that, working through that, that is a normal conflict, I think. And particularly when you love the stuff and you're a collector, it is a normal conflict. And it's a normal conflict because we don't know what the future holds. We don't know if these cards are going to go up in value or down in value, which would change what you're going to do, right? Like if you knew for sure they'd go up in value, you'd probably feel better and you'd be less stressed out and you'd be like, well, I could just sell them in the future then, or this or that. But we don't know that. And because we don't know that, we have to put that risk in our assessment of like, well, realistically, could these go down another 30, 40, 50% within 6 months or a year? Could they go down even more, over a longer period of time? And am I comfortable with that? Or would I feel uncomfortable with that? Am I willing to take that risk? Like the more you ask those questions, the more honest you are with yourself, and then the better decisions you'll make. Just trusting yourself to make those decisions. Simple answers to like these things, they're too intricate, anything else like, you want to add, to that, or, things that you want to share with the audience in terms of, because I'm sure sort of in your experience, things that have worked for you, things that haven't worked for you, maybe progress you've made in this, or times where you've, felt like it was easier or more difficult, anything that comes to mind?
Well, thank you so much for that response. I really appreciate that.
You're a smart, thoughtful guy. Like I have faith in you would be the number one thing I would say. You'll I think you'll figure it out.
Thank you. Yeah. It's that uncertainty, as well as my career is, I'm kind of self-employed creative. So, there are periods of time where there's very little and I work other jobs to supplement my income. And then there are times where my creative work is paying me quite well. And so, you know, recently when I was employed in creative work, I had this kind of chunk of money, and like 3 of my Grail cards all came up on auction at once. And I was like, oh my God, I have the money. I should do it. And I did it. And then, you know, now kind of 6 months later, I'm like, struggling a bit with it, but I have these cards that I always wanted, but is it, you know, affecting my quality of life because, you know, I don't have that money to spend on necessities and things like that.
Yeah.
I did I have anything else that I wanted to ask?
It's amazing how Pokemon can be so profound.
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about is largely the human condition in so many ways. And for us, because we're engaged in this hobby, you know, it becomes about this, but like these are, you know, delayed gratification, you know, versus getting gratification now, you know, pleasure in the moment, right? Like these are lifelong things and debates and conflicts that every single human being thinks about and deals with on a daily basis. And so I think that, you know, one piece that I think is good to think about that I found, maybe I'll, you know, end with it there, is that, well, it can go both ways. It can be a double-edged sword. So oftentimes I've found that it can be really nice to have more options. So if I sell some, then it gives me the option to do more in the future. Or if I sell none, then it does, then I get rid of these options, but I have these options. So trying to figure out how to have sort of get yourself in a situation where like, I don't have to stay in this career. I don't have to live where I am. I don't have to be in around these people. I don't have to, like, the more freedom that you can have can be good. Although with more freedom, like everything in life, comes more challenge in terms of deciding what's the right thing. And oftentimes there are lots of good choices and there are lots of, it can be very hard to choose between two things. So life ain't easy. Life is filled with conflict between these types of things. And yeah, just trusting yourself to sort of navigate your way through it. Everything you're saying sort of very thoughtful. So I would, yeah, just encourage you to continue to do that. I do think that, just speaking from a financial perspective, it's like for me personally, just to reiterate it, the less money if I'm making very little a year and I have a lot invested, I want to make sure that what I have invested is very well spread out among a number of things, because I'm really counting more on my investments to pay for my retirement someday, to be there if I get sick and can't work or lose my job, or like, you know, like I'm relying more heavily on that than I would with someone who either has a lot of cash or who has a very high paying job or a high paying skill set that they'd be unlikely to use. And so when I do consults with people with like a very high paying skill sets, you know, it's sensible that they can take more risk in their investments. People with less of that, I think, have to be more careful with investments in general. And because their investments are actually going to probably be their best chance at creating sort of like that generational wealth, or like the FIRE movement of like having enough passive income to retire early, if that's something that you want, or have like the freedom to change jobs. But thank you so much, man, for coming on and sharing with us. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me and all you do for the hobby. I've been listening for a long time, since you started up the channel, really. And yeah, just really appreciate it. Have a great stream. And
thanks, man.
See you around.
Appreciate you. Take care. All right. So next up, we got Leaf Green Goblin, and then we got Pocket Monster Dom afterwards. All right. I'm going to be able to go for like another 30 to 40 minutes probably. And then I have to start getting ready for, you know, and speaking on one of the topics tonight of like, you know, having other hobbies and other responsibilities and other types of things. You know, I'm also trying to bring balance into my life as well, even keeping the streams a little bit tighter as I go into this new year, even though I love talking about this stuff. And as you all know, we can go on for many hours. Okay. Leaf Green Goblin is next. I'm going to bring you on. Hey there.
How's my audio?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Nice to meet you finally.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. This is it's kind of weird. I think you might be the first person I've talked to about cards ever.
Nice.
So, this is
I'm honored.
So I'll do just like a quick background. I've collected cards, only Pokemon my whole life. Kind of just buying packs here and there, pretty casual. And then about a year and a half ago, I started buying singles, and then recently I started buying graded cards. And just when I saw this question here, I thought the number one thing that's really helped me is finding the difference between loving Pokemon cards, and loving a card, and kind of trying to prioritize like which one means the most to you, and kind of being able to cut out and kind of find substitutions if you can't necessarily, if you're finding, if it's stressing you out, because at the end of the day, a hobby, it shouldn't really be stressing you out. So kind of wanted to start with that.
Absolutely. So what's been your process like of kind of refining your taste over time, or finding things that you like more or continue to like? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, so as a kid, I honestly, when I look back at my cards, I didn't pull anything that crazy. So I don't even think I have much stuff when I look back I feel really nostalgic for. I used to get like, certain sets definitely, but I think besides like promo cards, like I had a Level X promo, I had a EX promo, but I would say, one thing for me is like I found out about vending recently, and I really started getting into the vending series, but I wasn't really into grading. But I didn't like how the Japanese looked in my binder, but I noticed that aesthetically as a display, I did like how Japanese looked more than English. So I started buying some vending cards, and then I started looking back. I was like, this event, it's a PSA 10 ride-on. I like it, but I got a good deal on it. But do I really want this card? Do I really want to collect all of vending? Or was it kind of just like I liked a couple of the cards, and I, kind of just started getting sucked into good deals and always looking at auctions? Because that's the thing that how I am. I work in fashion, and before Pokemon, I was really into to afford more expensive clothing. I used to buy and sell like old designer, and kind of looking at market trends of what's in and what's kind of popping.
Cool.
So I always kind of go.
I think Ava, do you know Ava's channel?
Ava's binder?
Yeah, I think she mentioned she was also like flipping clothes and doing fashion before she got into this too. Just sorry, that just connection.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, no, that kind of would it's kind of helping me kind of fund my collection right now for cards.
Sure.
But, once again, the whole just kind of separating, just kind of forming a little hierarchy in my mind. I'm like, well, I love fashion more than Pokemon. That's why I'm not making a Pokemon channel. I'm not trying to, I don't know. I'm not making into business. Like, that's another thing, is that I don't want to keep buying so much where I feel pressured to start selling so I can go get more expensive cards. When in reality, I'm honestly, when I look at my goals right now, after finding, looking at one thing I'm happy about is the more I've watched you and just other creators is I found more stuff that I like, but it's also helped me become more good at fine tuning what I really like. So besides honestly a couple versus PSA 10s, which is, for me, fair, it's nothing besides the Umbreon. They can be fairly affordable. And I want an entire just binder of like PSA 6 to 8 Nintendo EX series, which, I have a couple of those are pretty expensive. But besides that, everything else, like, I'm good. Like I'll every once in a while I'll buy something here and there. Some for example, a guilty pleasure of mine is those break cards. They're in my opinion, they're an eyesore. But when I want to buy a card, or when I'm like, oh man, there's only one listing of it on eBay, and this could be just any card. And then I look at the last like 10 sold, and I'm like, man, it's not a good price, but I'm starting to feel some FOMO. I just go buy a break. I'd go buy a break card, a couple of break cards. I get that nice feeling of just opening up the card, and just kind of finding those little things like that helps me save money and not go first in a different set.
I love that you said, I love one thing that you said in particular about how that sometimes learning, because I think part of why I like to show people other cards out there, I worry that people are going to see that and overspend, right? And it's going to be like, oh, great, Jake. Now you've showed me this other thing cool that I like have to have. And like, I think that is a risk. And part of why I want to do these streams, right, is like we need to figure out ways, like everyone has their own personal goals. Everyone has their own personal tastes, right? And like, let's all have good conversations with each other on how we can all accomplish our unique goals in a healthy way while not taking advantage of each other and just like supporting each other, right, through our journeys through the hobby would be ideal. But that is something I think about, which is that I actually, part of why I'm showing these things is to encourage people to not buy maybe some of the things that they were buying, because I think that they don't realize that there's so much other cool stuff out there that might be more affordable or that might be interesting. And so it's this sort of thing of like, of knowing what all the options are out there. I love how you sort of have taken that to be like, wow, there are so many cool options. So I really need to kind of narrow myself, or your way of dealing with that is like, I'm going to really narrow myself and I'm going to focus on like, I can be like really patient because like there are so many cool options. There are so many cool things to have. And so I don't have to like collect everything, or I don't have to jump on everything, or because there are going to be so many other cool options, and there are always going to be so many cool options. I think that's really important because I do think there are people out there. It's like, I need to own this specific Pokemon card. I need to own this specific set, this specific thing. And, and I've told people like, I can skip if things feel overvalued to me, I'll never buy them, or I can skip a million of that because there's so many things that do feel good value to me, and value isn't just financial. It's fundamentally it's like how much you enjoy it and how much you appreciate and get value out of it for the price that you're paying. So I think that's awesome. I do think it certainly can be easier said than done, for sure. Yeah. But it's a great goal to set. And I think particularly, it's like I only have so much money and I only have so much time that I want to spend in this hobby and that I want to spend doing these things, because there's other goals I have in my life, right? Like for you, it's like, well, I have this love of fashion, and I know my life will be better if I spend a certain amount of my time and a certain amount of my money engaging in that world in a way that like brings me meaning and satisfaction, and I think, it's and then there's relationships and there's work and there's all sorts of things, and I think being thoughtful about all of that and balanced is how none of it burns you out as much, or none of it becomes frustrating. Or if you stop liking something, or you get bored, because boredom is a really normal thing too. I'm bored of, and you kind of mentioned this too, it's like, or maybe it was the last person, but like, boredom can happen, right? Of like, I no longer really enjoy what I was collecting or this set. Let me go collect, or engage in this other thing. And hopefully I bought these things at decent value. Now I can resell them and use that to fund sort of the next thing. And all of that process has been enjoyable for me, rather than I bought things at the top of a market into FOMO that I didn't really understand, when I didn't really understand what else was out there. They've gone down a ton in value, and now I just like hate this hobby and I have to quit and leave forever, type of thing, which is understandable. But it's the more these conversations can happen and the more that type of stuff can get to people, I think the more people will be in a mindset where they can like get the most out of being here. So appreciate what you shared. Anything else you want to say about your experience, or want to say to the audience before we bring on the next guest?
Yeah, I'm sure I'll probably join some other time. Now I got the heebie-jeebies out.
Please.
I would just say, it's kind of trying to keep it succinct. Yeah, I think sometimes like some of the tips you try and give are just other people, like they might sound very cliche, but if you do them, they work to help with, preventing addiction or burnout or boredom. If you know, sometimes I just open up my binder, you know, if I get salty that, you know, I lost an auction that was a great deal, I just open my binder, pull out a card, take a look at it, you know, open my drawer, whatever, look at my graded cards, switch up the displays, just stuff like that can really help because, you know, I'm very thankful, you know, I have a family where if I go bankrupt, you know, God forbid, they'll back me up. But I have expenses for rent, you know, I have a girlfriend, I have money outside this, but I can still afford the cards I like. Now, part of it is maybe because I don't want $3,000-$4,000 cards, and I think I'll always be a binder boy, overgraded, but still just trying those little things like I said, like buying $3 cards, or sometimes like what I do is I just take like Pokemon favorites like that maybe might not get highlights in secret rares or stuff like I like Hippowdon. I just go buy like 9 cards for like $5 total and just fill up a page and just yeah, it just kind of gives me a fix. And then if cards are kind of burning me out, I'll go play on my Game Boy, or I don't know, I'll watch the movie, or there's something else. You know, it's you don't. I think there's kind of a problem when you love Pokemon and the only thing that's keeping you going is just thinking about the money. And obviously, part of that's got to be charged for the passion. Otherwise, you'd be investing in something else. But you know, I think if you just take a step back and obviously very cliche, like self-reflect, just keep doing that. I think, you know, that's the best tip I can give.
Absolutely. And something I can sort of add on that piece is that the more you have of something, or the more of a business that you have, and to touch on something you said earlier, like why you haven't started a channel, for example, the more that you build in a space, first of all, it takes time to do all of that, but then it takes time to maintain all of that and continue to engage all of that. So it becomes more difficult to spend less time, less energy, these types of things. So what you're saying is I think valuable for people too, of like, if I spend a lot of money and I put a lot, into this, and I put a lot of time and I start a channel, I do all of those things, is that a good decision for me? Or is that going to unbalance my life and pull me more into this in a way that's unhealthy? Or as I'm expanding, how do I find balance in that and enjoyment out of that, and a routine that works for you? You know, and I think some people want to spend a lot more time doing this than other people, and will be happy spending more time doing this than other people, you know. But I do think that it can taking on a lot of debt, taking on a large collection, taking on a channel, a lot of responsibilities, these types of things, they can't just go away like that when you feel like you don't want to do it, or you feel bored, or these types of things. So I think that that when you were talking about sort of why you decide to do what you do, that's sort of what was going through my mind. Any last minute comment on that sort of thing, or do you feel so good?
Yeah, I completely agree. Just thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for hopping on.
Yep, take care.
Appreciate you. Okay, so this will be the last person coming on today, Pocket Monster Dom, and then probably we'll try to have another video for you guys sometime early next week. Really appreciate everyone hanging out. Really appreciate all the new faces today. I think pretty much everyone who's come on has been someone who hasn't jumped on before. So really appreciate you guys taking the plunge. I think people are really going to enjoy hearing from each of you, and get a lot of value from hearing your stories and perspectives and seeing new faces. So just want to thank everyone, including this next person who's about to come on, Pocket Monster Dom.
Hello. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks for hopping on.
Oh yeah, I was super booked up, so I figured. No, I've been meaning to come on in some capacity for a while. I really appreciate what you do for this space, and amongst all the investing and yada yada and openness and these products, that it's nice to have a grounding place where people can talk about obviously the problems that can come along with this sort of thing, when you have cards that are worth multiple thousands of dollars, or and people aren't in such great financial positions. I think it's a normal thing to be concerned about.
Yeah.
Um,
And even
yeah.
if they are in really good financial positions, I think that the hobby can still be stressful and addicting too, for people. But doubly so and doubly difficult if you're also in a difficult financial position, which the hobby can put you in a worse one, right?
Yeah.
In a quick way if you're not careful. So
Yeah.
really.
So I guess just to tell people, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Pocket Monster Dom. It's fairly lighthearted. I open things. I maybe give my opinions here and there on what not to go spend a bunch of money on, or not do what I'm doing. I can afford to do it because I don't have a lot to spend my disposable income on. I'm able to do it. I don't have people that are depending on me to provide for them or whatever. I'm a musician. I'm a singer. I make money from performing, and I'm in a band, and I play solo, and I bartend, and so I think Pokemon's just got this really interesting spot in my life where it's like, it's definitely a hobby. One thing I wanted to share, because I've had a lot of these concerns, that I'm sure people have. One thing I wanted to share with folks is that I think I'm kind of in a unique position now where I've worked at a few card shows, and last one was my third, and I have a history of selling, so I kind of like that, being out there and talking to people. But it took a lot of weight off of my shoulders and my mind when, I'd sold on Mercari and stuff like that, but just letting some things go, and not having this, settling on that you're an OCD person and that you're a hoarder and that, you can't do it. It's sometimes, I hear a lot of people say, and I'm pretty sure even I've heard you say it, that maybe you should sell 10% of your stuff if you're nervous. Why not? You'll still be in the hobby. If you're nervous for a reason, probably. You might be a nervous person, but if it's something you think about a lot, then maybe you have to look at yourself and say, okay, this is bothering me. I'll feel better if maybe I just get rid of some stuff, sell some cards, get your experience in that portion of it, because if you're nervous about the money, then learn about the money, because you can't just sell. Like, let's say you had no experience selling at all, which I'm sure you do have experience, but let's say you didn't, and you have this massive collection worth all this money, and something came up, like you lost a loved one and you had to pay for a funeral or whatever the case. If you have no experience selling, you're not going to get the money that your collection's worth. You're going to settle for an offer where somebody's going to give you 40% or something like that, and you're just going to fire sell it, right?
Sure.
So I guess what I wanted to come on and say was, if you're nervous about the amount of, and the other part about these card shows is they're predominantly sports, and they are welcoming Pokemon vendors in because there's usually not enough. And a lot of people come for Pokemon, and it's just like Wayne Gretzky cards on the table or whatever. Not that I just don't have really any connection with sports. I kind of look at it like the Coliseum. It's just a big distraction. But I guess any hobby could be considered a distraction, right?
Sure. Yeah, no. I think that, yeah, I have nothing to add. I agree. And I think that, everyone, right. And why it's like, I think that there's some generally good common sense type advice, and including like, hey, think about selling something if you're
Yeah.
enough money and you're nervous. Like, that's a very,
Yeah.
right. I think everyone is, everyone has to, and you kind of alluded to it, like, people are complicated, right? Like, it could be that I'm overly neurotic and anxious because I have an attachment issue from my childhood and I was never treated well by my parents. And so every hobby and everything I do every day in my life, I've always sort of had this pattern of like, I think it's going to go terribly, even when I'm being very thoughtful. And it's like, you might be being very thoughtful. And so it may be less of an action that's needed and more of a, therapy relationship and a restoring of, healthy relationships in your life and getting people who support you. You know what I mean? So people are extremely complicated, as you know.
Yeah, of course.
But yes, it's really good to know your options on the table so that you can, I really trust people like a lot to like figure things out, but we need good information.
Yeah.
Right. Like particularly people who come into this who like they don't know what's what, right? Like when it's a very smart person who's very thoughtful can make a lot of mistakes coming into something new.
That really pisses me off. And I'm sure that if I know anything about you by now is that like when I see these, not to throw stones at Whatnot in particular, but having gone to shows and giving people, like I'm giving stuff away to young kids. I'm giving them hollows. I'm giving them pins. I'm throwing in an extra card. Somebody wants to trade, and it's like, okay. She's like, "Do you want to be my trade buddy?" And I'm like, "Of course. Here, take this like great card that's in mint condition. She might destroy it. It doesn't matter." Like, so when I see these Whatnot streamers and they're like, "Oh man, this is like, look at this Charizard. It's like very rare, because there's only so and so in a PSA 3." It's like, okay, so you're probably charging more for a PSA 3 than a raw copy because it's graded, and you're telling them it's low pop, or there's like so many things wrong with what's happening to people on there, and it's ruining their exposure to the hobby. Let's say you just started this year amidst all this crap that's been going on with Pokemon, and you come in and somebody's like, "Okay, wow, I've got this like insanely like super rare Mew. Like I bet you've never seen it. This is $70." And then you go on eBay and you see that it's worth 20 in mint condition, and you're like, I mean, hopefully that's when you would hope that somebody would use some sense and say, okay, maybe this isn't the best app. Maybe I should learn a little bit more. But I want to share a couple things. Okay. So
sure.
It's Munch Pikachu PSA 10. I show this card because this was a unique moment for me, having gotten back into the hobby when I had $1,200 to spend on this card. And I really wanted it because I really believe in it. And I think that card in particular spans multiple audiences and whatever. But that card's worth, I don't know, 2,100 right now. And I was right. I knew that it had a good trajectory. Sure, it could still come down. I don't count my chickens before my eggs hatch. That's my typical lay on life. But like, I was fortunate, I was buying these ponchos. I want to say I bought the 4 of them for $200 or something with the boxes, right? And they all got 10s. And now the boxes are worth $200. So these cards are 100%, unforeseen, unrealized assets. Am I right?
Unrealized gains.
Unrealized gains. But I don't think as many people were as fortunate as me to come in before, like right before COVID, and sort of scoop up a lot of stuff that they wanted. So of course they'd have FOMO now, and I do sort of feel bad about that position, because let's say you do, like, you want to be this great collector, or you want to have this great collection, and the prices are just kind of crazy. Like, I usually recommend to folks not to buy PSA 10s of ultra modern cards, because there are probably so many mint copies out there. The premium that's getting put on ultra modern 10s it's a little bit crazy when it's not if it's a set card, especially. I would say don't grade stuff yourself. If you really want to grow in this hobby, learn how to grade stuff yourself. If you have any apprehensions on that, work towards that. But I think again, I want to say I think you're a great place to be for this, because it's like that saying, like when you learn one thing, master one thing, you master 10,000 things, right? So I think you having probably being, I don't know if you'd call yourself an expert in your field, but the way that your mind carries over to this is great for people to watch, because maybe they do need therapy. I'm not saying that you're giving people therapy, but I think the way that you break some things down for people, and maybe they're not used to that sort of thinking, I think that's very important for people. And I would encourage people to work on themselves. And it's not really that Pokemon's the problem. It's that, like you're saying, they need to look at themselves, and like sometimes the real glaring issues are right there. And you even know them because you worry about them every day. It's like, that's the issue. And this is like one of the secrets to life I learned that just seems so obvious, but like when you think things are wrong, there's probably something wrong, and you probably need to address it. And if you're spending too much money on cards, you probably need to stop. And, maybe not altogether. Like the last guy said, he buys cards to fill out a binder. He feels happy about that. Your life will change. Your position will change a little bit, hopefully, if you're aspiring to more. And I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that's tricky about feelings is that it's unclear why you're having them whenever you have them, to some degree. And I think that it's great to be thoughtful and reflective, or try to be thoughtful and reflective on why I might be feeling, a certain way, and then sort of what to do about it, just as you were talking about. And I do think that like we're very much talking about mental health today. This was like a mental health in the hobby discussion around like, should you buy, not a financial talk on should you buy. But just like I don't give financial advice. I don't do therapy on the stream because it's not personal. It's sort of general, but it's really important to talk about mental health in the community and with each other. And I think it's really important to talk about the financial stuff, and particularly when you're spending a lot of money, and when you're as the hobby gets, more, as the hobby has gotten a lot more expensive. Who knows if it'll get more expensive from here, or will get less expensive. But I think that both things, are certainly useful to have conversations. And I like doing the live call-in shows, because I think bringing new people and new faces on, and it humanizes, because this is a group of humans in the chat listening to these types of things. And it can humanize the online experience as much as possible, which I think is like important when having these discussions, and having them in a way that's like, helpful to people, rather than one person talking to camera.
That can get a bit tiring too.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much for hopping on.
Yeah, man.
Really appreciate it. Any last minute word before we?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it was nice meeting you. Firstly, I appreciate you having me on.
You as well. And you're in the Boston area, right?
I'm in Boston. Yeah.
Boston area, that's what I thought.
I'm working at the Best Flipping Card Show on the 21st. I'm going to have a table.
Nice.
But
on Instagram, we've talked before about that, and about the Best Flipping Card Show. I remember.
Yeah. Are you in Boston as well?
Yeah, Boston area.
Okay, cool.
But we're going to be doing some more events. I posted one on Instagram that'll be up in New Hampshire, about an hour away. If you want to come, if anyone else wants to come.
When is that?
It's the end of the month. I think it's the 28th. I did like a story on it. There'll be more stories on it, and Old School Pokemon is doing it too, and Dan TCG.
If I come, can I play the Pokemon theme song on the guitar? Is that okay?
It's okay with me. Well, we'll see if as long as it's cool with the store and cool with everyone. It's cool.
Yeah.
Enjoy that.
The last thing I want to do is plug my channel. A shameless plug. It's just Pocket Monster Dom. I don't have a lot of viewers. I don't release videos all the time. I just look at it as a hobby, and if it grows, it grows. I've most recently got a PSA return on there, and I did a 2-part series for that. So if you want to check it out, not to steal your viewers away from you, Jake. I know.
It's all right. No. Go check out Pocket Monster Dom, and no, I mean it's you know, everyone, it's great supporting, you know, people, and I'm definitely all for that.
The last thing I want to do is shout out Z&G Emporium's Discord. I got a couple of people. Got to shout out Castle.
Don't shout out Z&G. You can shout out the people, but no.
All right, so
mortal enemies because he doesn't like. It's one of my friends.
Yeah. All right, I won't shout out Z then. I'll shout out Cam, Castle, Ola Raichu, Lauren, and friend. Yeah.
The rest of them are great. Yeah.
He'll like this. I'll tell him about this later. I'll try to send him the clip. He's a good shit. He's a good fucking. Oh, sorry. He's a good guy.
While it's on my mind, all right, I'm gonna let you go, and then I'm just gonna do a brief send off. But thank you so much for coming on. Really.
Thanks, man.
Have a good one.
Ciao.
Yeah. So thank you all for watching. I do want to mention, because some people reached out to me about wanting to come to this like trade night from quite far away. I had people reach out to me who wanted to come from like 9, 10, 12 hours away. And, you know, I would say that it's probably not going to be worth it. It's only, you know, like a 5-6 hour thing. There's probably going to be like 50 to 100 people again. It's super fun. I think it's more for people who are like local or happen to be in the Boston area. Obviously, like if you really want to, and you have the time and you want to come from farther, we really appreciate the support and would love to have as many people as possible. I'm not trying to push people away, but I don't want people to come and like it not be worth it for them, and then that would be like the worst outcome for trying to get together people ever. So I am working on, you know, what, you know, and this I will announce and make very clear, something that would be like a larger convention, hopefully, that I'll be a part of at some point, which would be more of a national thing, or at least a thing where it would make sense more for people from out of state to go. In the meantime, a lot of us are going to Collecticons, like from this community and other Pokemon communities. That's sort of like the go-to at the moment. I'll be in Orlando for the upcoming Collecticon, and I'm not sure which other ones I'm going to go to yet this year, so I'm not going to confirm I'll be in any of them. But anyone who is like around the East Coast, particularly like close to New Hampshire, where it's going to be like the, you know, fairly close to the sort of Massachusetts, like New Hampshire-ish border, it is a really good time. Like, and you know what makes it is like people coming and like bringing awesome cards and awesome binders, and we can like trade. People buy, you can buy, you can sell, trade. And also the guy who we hosted in a really nice card store with like a pretty big room that fits, like, you know, could fit 150 people. It's a really nice setup, and we definitely appreciate him for doing it. And he's someone who we'll be working with in the future on things, hopefully, as we do like more events. And, you know, I very much care about like this online community, and you know, but I also do want to work on building like more local events, and I encourage other people out there too to build local relationships and local events sort of in your communities where you live. So I think that stuff's really great for the hobby. And okay, so thank you all again for hanging out. Hope you got something useful from this stream. And I know I did from the people who came on. So I assume other people will as well. And I will catch you guys all in a future one. All right. Take care, guys.